All right, welcome to yin, specifically yin for the SI joint and the front of the hips, the iliopsoas. We'll also target a little bit of the glutes as well, really just trying to release through that entire section of the middle of the body. So you are going to want a few props today. If you don't have anything, feel free to just work around it. You'll probably want a blanket, maybe two. If you don't have a bolster, some extra blankets that you can stack to create a bolster, some yoga blocks. And I've got myofascial release balls, but you can use tennis balls or lacrosse balls or anything as well. And maybe a foam roller. If you don't have a foam roller, again, we can use the blocks or something as an alternative. But we'll go ahead and just jump right into it. We'll start with the myofascial release balls. So we'll palpate for the area first, and then I'll have you get into it. We're actually going to want to find the frontal hip bones, the ASIS. So if you use your hands and you feel for these bones sticking out straight of the front of the hips, we're going to want to come about an inch inside of them and then just stay right in that region. So you have your lacrosse, tennis, or MFR balls right on the hip bone and then about an inch towards the midline of the body. And we're going to lay the body weight on it. So we'll lay prone on the belly. So the way I like to get into it is to come onto the belly, kind of hike the hip up, know kind of where you wanted to place that ball right inside that hip bone. And then the other one on the other side. And you may have to kind of move it around as you're getting settled, but it should feel like they're falling right inside that hip bone region, inside the skeletal structure of the body. And this is a nice way to really release the iliopsoas, which can get really tight. It can even get compacted when we sit a lot for our livings. So inviting it to release. And then once you find the balls in the place you'd like them, maybe you stay up on the forearms. You can also stack the arms and rest the forehead on the arms if you'd like to come a little bit more relaxing into it, prone. But just decide where you'd like to stay. And we'll be here for about 2 minutes. So once you feel settled, start to bring some awareness to your breath. As you inhale, feel a gentle compression of the soft tissue into the prop. And as you exhale, it's kind of like the balls are allowing to go deeper into the body. Inhale, it's like a gentle pushing away. And as you exhale, just allowing the balls to kind of sink deeper into the body. Continue with that breath and that sensation of engaging and softening. And just take a quick body scan. Notice if there's tension somewhere else in the body that you can soften. Make sure we're not adding tension in the neck or the shoulders, or even squeezing through the glutes or the hamstrings. Let that all be really soft, really passive. And we'll take a few more breaths here. And take about 2 more breaths. And then slowly walk the hands underneath of you to press yourself off of your myofascial release balls. Before we change our position, we'll come back onto the belly. We're going to target the rectus femoris. So think of like the upper leg portion and where it connects with the hip. So for this one, we'll place the balls one on top of the other. Again, we're going to palpate for that frontal hip bone. And we're going to place the balls just kind of right underneath of that. Again, one on top of the other. And then again, we'll lay the body weight. As you get into the position, laying the balls right on that upper thigh, the other leg will kind of come out like a half frog position, anywhere that feels accessible for you. Again, make sure you don't feel any like sharp or painful sensations. If so, you might be on a bone or something. Even little micro movements can really help release from there. Make sure you're not on the frontal hip bone, but we're just inside of it and about an inch below it. So we're really on the upper thigh and where it starts to connect with the hip. Trying to release this whole area, not just directly the iliopsoas, but all of the connecting as well. Several things to do here. You can just stay still and breathe. Again, you can be on the forearms where you can stack the forearms and release the head. If you want a little movement, the leg that we're working, you can slowly bend and extend and just put a little bit more body weight into it. When you bend the knee, you might start to feel that. But we're really looking to soften and relax here. So whatever's going to support you in doing that the most. Again, we'll be here for about 2 minutes, just focusing on the breath, whether you have a little bit of movement or if you are staying still. And if you were moving, I'll invite you for the next minute just to stay still, whether that's keeping the knee bent or keeping the legs straight. And just focus on the breath. And take about 2 more breaths here. And then however makes sense for you to come off the props, all we're going to do is switch sides. So taking the balls to the other leg. Again, right underneath that hip area at the leg junction where the leg starts to connect with the hip. Make any adjustments so you are able to relax into it. If there's any sharp pain, it might just be on a bone, so we just need to make a little adjustment. Other leg will be bent out to the side like a half frog. Maybe you come and you settle right back into stillness. Maybe for the first minute you have that gentle bending and extending of the leg. Just listen to your body, decide what feels best for you. If you were moving, I invite you to come into stillness again, whether that's keeping the leg bent or keeping it straight. And just focus on the breath. With every exhale, feeling a little bit more softening in the body. And then again, however makes sense to you to come up. And for now, you can set the myofascial release balls off to the side. We're going to move into a soft tissue muscle, the QL, the quadratus lumborum. So you can kind of palpate for this if you take your hands to your back and you kind of feel onto the sides, not the ropey ones right next to the spine, but really kind of more towards the outside. This muscle connects the top of the hip all the way to the first rib and to each vertebra of the lumbar spine. So if this area gets really tight, it can cause us to have a pelvic tilt that might cause some low back pain as well. So we're going to try to just gently release that. For this, you'll lay on your side. I'm going to lay on my left side on my forearm. You will need a block. Again, if you don't have a block, a few blankets might be really nice. So I'm on my left forearm. My left leg is going to extend straight to start, and the right knee is going to be supported on the block on the mid setting, but make sure the foot can rest gently on the floor. So we're not active through the hip. It's really passive. So if you need to turn the block at an angle or anything to support that foot being rested, just make an adjustment so it can be soft. The left leg can stay straight, or if it feels good in your body, maybe you actually bend the knee and grab hold of the foot. And then we're slowly going to let the right ear fall to the right shoulder. So I'm moving my head away from my left forearm, and then you're letting the left side waist melt towards the floor. So you can kind of feel the weight of the body melting towards the floor. And just a gentle release through that side of the body and into the side of the low back. This muscle can pull on the vertebra, on the hips, and the ribs. So pretty important one. If it gets tight, to release. And really just let gravity do the work. So rather than feeling like you're lifting in that left forearm, let yourself sag. Let that left side of the body really just kind of melt towards the floor so you can feel that release through the rib cage, release through the side body where the rib and the hip connect. And for the next minute, if you want, let the head fall the other way. So now the left ear is towards the left shoulder. And again, just bring your awareness to your breath. Our goal as the body is to allow ourselves to stay still, use whatever props. For now, it's a block in the floor to support us. And then gravity will apply the needed resistance for the stretch. So make sure you don't feel like you're muscling into any of the shapes. But really, we're pretty passive. Take another deep breath here. If you did grab hold of that left foot, slowly release. Use your right hand in front of your chest to press yourself up. Pause for just a moment sitting before you switch sides, and notice if there's any difference between the left side from the neck to the hip, different from the right side. Just taking a moment to gather in any differences you may notice. And then whenever you're ready, we'll just switch to the other side. So we'll come onto the right forearm. Right leg will extend out straight. Left knee will find the block on its mid setting, but again, let the left foot rest gently on the floor. And then maybe we keep the right leg as it is. Maybe you grab hold of the foot. And for the first minute or so, we'll let the left ear come to the left shoulder as we just start to let the right side of the body kind of melt towards the floor. And again, finding that stillness within the body and just bringing the awareness to the breath. And then just easy, let the head fall right ear to right shoulder. And then feel the weight of gravity melt you even deeper into the stretch. Notice if the mind is busy planning future events or analyzing. There's nothing to do, there's nothing to adjust. Just bring that mental awareness back to your breath. Part of releasing pain is helping the nervous system be able to relax as well. So, really tapping into that sense of being present. And take another breath here. You grab the right foot, slowly release. Bring your left hand in front of you to press yourself up. And then pause for a moment, just seated. Notice how you feel specifically in the region between the hips and the rib cage on the back body. And then we're gonna move into a myofascial release technique for the SI joint. The SI joint, like all of our other joints, if we don't use it and keep it nice and lubricated, can get really stuck feeling. So just like we want to bend and extend to keep the knee healthy, the SI joint doesn't have as big of movement, but it is still a joint, so it needs to be moved. So I'm going to use a foam roller. You can use blocks if you don't have a foam roller at home. You might want to place both blocks side by side on their lowest setting like that. So you're kind of making a rectangle, but I'm going to use a foam roller. We'll start laying on our backs. Just have your foam roller kind of handy. I like to just place mine in between my feet and my hips as I lower myself down. The SI joint is right there at the top of the back of the hip. So if you've ever seen like a skeleton, you've got that butterfly shape. So that's really where we're going to want to place whatever props we're using, whether that be a block or a foam roller. So we're not going to be on the low back. The low back will be completely free. We're not going to be on the bullseye of the glute, but it's really going to be at the top of the bone structure of the hip. So slowly pick your hips up off the floor. Place your prop right there, kind of in that tailbone pelvis region. And then slowly bring the knees into the chest. So whatever prop you're using kind of feels like a little wedge holding the lower body up. Now we're going to do one side at a time. So letting everything stay nice and centered. If you're worried about the foam roller rolling away, you can always place your hands on it, but it should be pretty wedged in there. Let your knees gently fall towards the right. So you kind of feel the left side of your body almost pick up off your prop. And then we're just going to mimic walking here. So right knee comes in, left leg releases, and then we switch. So kind of just like a air walking movement, gliding the knees one past the other, just gently massaging right in that SI joint. Encouraging that little movement of the joint with the movement of the legs, like a moonwalk. Let the rest of the body be really heavy here. Not trying to bring any more tension in. And then take a couple more little walking motions. And bring the legs back into center. We're gonna just gently circle the left knee. So I'm still keeping my knees more towards the right. I'm just moving my left leg in a circle, which will gently massage that SI joint on the right side of the body. So the right leg is just heavy. It's just kind of relaxing out towards the side. And just drawing little circles with the left knee. Try to let go of tension in the low back. Let your low back just rest. Let the upper body rest. And slowly bring that back into stillness. Bring your hips back through the center. Make any adjustments you might need, and then let the knees fall over towards the left side. So the right side is almost lifted off your prop. And then again, just mimic, and it's not a huge movement, just mimic that little kind of walking motion. You should really feel that right at the top of the back left hip. Again, if you've ever seen a skeleton, that butterfly shape right at the top middle, kind of what we're wanting to target here. And really let go of any other muscular engagement. Let the hips feel heavy on your prop. And then slowly bring them back. Keep the left leg nice and heavy and just gently move that right leg or that right knee in a circle. Keeping the weight on that left hip. Encouraging that release through the joint, that lubrication, drawing in the blood and everything to make it really healthy all around the soft tissue. Joints need movement in order to be lubricated, so it's really important to not forget this joint as well. And bring it back to stillness. Slowly bring your legs back to center. Release one leg at a time towards the floor. Pick your hips up just enough you can slide your prop out from underneath of you, and then lower your hips back towards the earth. Take your feet a little bit wider than hips distance, let the knees fall together, and take a moment, bring your awareness to that SI region. Just see how it feels. The sacroiliac joint, which is what allows us to be able to move the hips one at a time in those different directions. So really important. And take one more breath here. Just noticing how it feels. There's no right or wrong. Just checking in. And we're going to move into a little nerve flossing technique specifically for the nerve that runs through the hip. It might get compressed by some muscles. So this one's really nice if you have nerve pain, which will feel different than muscle pain. It'll be more shocking and wave down through the leg. So we'll keep the left knee bent. Go ahead and hug your right knee into the chest, and we'll grab behind the leg. So grabbing at that hamstring. When the knee is in towards the chest, we'll flex the foot. So we're not looking to stretch the nerve here. We're really wanting to create that smooth gliding of the nerve in between the muscles in case there is any compression. As you straighten the leg, you'll point your toes. So we're creating slack on one end, tension on the other. As you bend the knee, flex the foot. As you straighten the leg, point the toe. Bend and flex. Straighten and point. Bend and flex the foot. Straighten the leg and point the foot. We'll do that about 4 more times. The sciatic nerve causes a lot of pain for people to the low back, the hips, and the leg. So, this therapeutic technique can be a nice way to encourage that nerve to move, to get the blood it needs to stay healthy. And then slowly release your right leg. We'll do the same on the left. So, hug the left knee into the chest, grabbing behind the leg. As you draw the knee into the chest, flex the foot. As you straighten the leg, point the foot. Bend the knee, flex the foot. Straighten the leg, point the foot. We'll do about 10 here. If you do this on your own, if this technique is something that's going to help you a lot and this is what you decide to go with, about 8 to 10 per side every day. So, less than 90 seconds, but it can really help that nerve and release any of that pain that we might have if you deal with sciatic issues. One or two more, depending on how quickly or slowly you are moving. And then release and return the foot towards the floor. For the next one, you can either use a block or a blanket. I really prefer a blanket. I think the softness of the blanket provides a little bit more forgiveness for the hips, but feel free to use a block if you like. We're going to stay on our back. We're going to slide the prop one more time underneath the tailbone and pelvis region. So stay on your back, grab either a block or a blanket, pick your hips up and slide your prop underneath of you. We're going to work on a technique to strengthen and then stretch through the iliopsoas. So think of like your hip flexor muscles, all the muscles in front of this frontal hip bone we've been talking about through class today. So again, make sure the blanket is not under your low back, but it's really right underneath the hip, the top of the hip bone region. Hug your right knee into your chest. This time we'll grab above the leg. So you're kind of holding onto your shin bone or the knee, and then straighten your left leg up towards the ceiling. Now we're going to do a little bit of strengthening and then we'll relax into a stretch. So keep your right knee hugged in pretty firmly to your chest. Notice the tilting of your pelvis. So as we lower the left leg, you don't want to come into an anterior or a front body and pelvic tilt. So make sure the pelvis stays nice and neutral. So to achieve that, if that doesn't make sense to you, that's okay. You'll lower your left foot almost until it's out of eyesight, but not all the way to the floor. You should start to feel a gentle tugging sensation on the front of the hip, the iliopsoas. So now I can no longer see my toes, but I definitely feel the front of my left hip engaging. And then we're just going to pulse for about 20 repetitions. So drop an inch, lift an inch. Building strength in that iliopsoas. Because sometimes it's not all about the stretching. Sometimes if we have frontal hip pain, we need to build some strength in the muscle too. If we sit a lot for a living, those muscles get compressed. They can become overly tight. So inviting that strengthening can be really beneficial. Take about 5 more. And then just let the foot fall to the floor. Here you'll feel the pelvis tilt up a little bit, and that's okay. But let the foot find the floor. So make sure you're not holding the foot up, but the heel of the foot is actually resting on the floor. Again, we're firmly hugging the right knee into the chest. Left leg is straight or straight-ish with the heel resting on the floor. And we'll stay here for about 2 minutes. So here's the stretching part. Just feel that gentle release to the front of the hip. And come back to just focusing on the breath. About 1 or 2 more breaths here. And then you have a couple options. If the hip is really tight, I'll invite you to bend the knee as you draw it in. If you're working on strengthening, though, I invite you to engage the hip and bring your leg back up straight, just to challenge the tissue a little bit. And then we'll switch. Bend, once it's up, bend the left knee, switch the hands over to the left side. Hug the left knee in pretty firmly, as close to your chest as your body will allow. Straighten your right leg up towards the sky, flex the foot. Again, lower the leg until it almost disappears from you, or until you feel that hip really kick in, the front of the hip, right around that frontal hip bone we palpated for earlier. Feel that engagement. And then again, we'll just find that little pulsing motion. Keep driving through the heel, drawing the toes to the shin. And if this technique works really well for you and you do it later, whatever side felt stronger or weaker, you'll want to match the reps of the weak side to the strong side, or vice versa, strong to weak, depending on how it feels in your body. About 5 more. If you're building strength, and then slowly lower it down, heel touches the floor and come into the stretch. And you would do it just like we are now. A few reps and then stretch for a couple minutes. It's nice to have a lot of time to focus on releasing the hips, but often we don't have 45 minutes to practice every day. So take one of these things away, whatever suits you best. Just a minute or two every day to help the hips and the low back really be healthy and strong. Take a couple more breaths here. And then again, listen to your body. Would be better to bend the knee and draw it in, or maybe we activate that iliopsoas and we draw the straight leg up. And then bend the knee. Pause for just a moment. Let your low back kind of sag towards the floor. Feel that decompression through the hip. Maybe even the thighs are resting in the hands to give you a little extra support, or even a tactile connection of the body. And then whenever you're ready, just release your feet towards the floor. Again, pick your hips up just enough to slide your prop out from underneath of you. We're going to do one more here on our back for myofascial release. So grab those 2 myofascial release balls, and we're going to place them right in the bullseye of your tush. So right in the middle of that glute max. So 1 ball in each hand. Press through the feet to lift your hips. And right in that general vicinity of the bullseye of the glutes. Because we can't really work the hips without working the back of the hips as well. It's all connected. Our body is one interconnected intelligent system. And maybe you just stay still and you just let the compression of the muscles melt around the props. Maybe if you want gentle movement, you can just gently windshield wiper the knees side to side. We'll be here for about another minute. So, whatever feels best for you, moving or staying still. Just let the body be heavy. Let the soft tissue wrap around the prop, releasing. Bring the awareness back to your breath. The body feel heavy. Just one more breath here. And then slowly kick the hips up enough to remove the balls, come back flat onto the floor. Take a moment to notice what happens in the glutes. Maybe there's a temperature difference from where the balls just were, maybe a tingly sensation. And that's a nice way to get feedback if there's any kind of issues once you feel that blood flowing back in, just to rehydrate the tissues of the hips. And then we're going to come into our final yin posture. So for this one, you might want 2 blankets. I'm going to opt for 2 blocks. But again, if you don't have those, blankets can be a really nice alternative. And we're going to come into a supine Baddha Konasana or supine butterfly pose. So I like the blocks or the blankets. So the legs, the weight of the legs isn't pulling into the iliopsoas or the hips, but it's really more supportive. So we'll bring the bottom of the feet together. Let your knees fall off towards their sides as much as feels natural for you. And then the blocks will be kind of angled and they're just catching the outside of the thighs or the outside of the knees, supporting your range of motion, but also allowing the weight of the legs to be anchored onto something. So again, they're not pulling onto the hips, but it can really support the hips instead. Arms can be however is comfortable. They can be resting on the body, they can be out to the side, or they can even be overhead or in a cactus shape. Again, whatever feels best in your body. Once you feel supported with your props, bring the awareness back to the breath and feel that gentle release through the front of the hip. I think it's important to note that when it comes to back and hip issues, especially spine, like any disc issues or anything, even laying flat onto our back, there's still pressure on the discs because of gravity. So at no point in our life are we not loading the discs. So to find these therapeutic modalities that can help everything to stay healthy or as healthy as it can really help us to move with a little less pain and feel better in the bodies that we're in. So I say that not to sound discouraging if you deal with spinal issues, but to understand that sometimes there is just that pressure. And then if we're standing, there's more pressure. If we bend over, there's more pressure. So just finding therapeutic means that really help nourish the body. So in yin, finding props to support you, not looking for the deepest stretch, but a nourishing, rehydrating, restorative practice. And then we're going to take a short shavasana. If you're enjoying the butterfly stretch, I invite you to stay exactly as you are for the next minute or so. But if you would like to take a more traditional shavasana or even a prone shavasana on the belly, if you'd like to release a little bit through the low back, or even on your side or seated. Again, whatever is going to make you feel the best. So we'll just take a couple minutes in whatever final relaxation pose you choose. Maybe if they're not already there, the eyes close or the gaze softens. And we'll sit for a couple minutes in stillness as we just focus on the breath. Let that be your anchor. And anytime the mind drifts, come right back to focusing on the breath. Start to deepen your breath. If you have more time to stay in Shavasana, I invite you to stay exactly as you are. But if it's time to move on with your day, take your time to come up into a seated posture. There's no rush, however you'd like to get there. Whenever you've arrived, I invite you to bring your hands to your heart. Take a moment to scan specifically through the hips and the low back region and just see if there's any difference between now and when you first arrived on your mat. Let's appreciate how quickly the body adapts and changes, and how important these gentle movements are to keep the tissues really healthy. Thank you so much for joining me today for this practice. From my heart to yours, be well.